Hi, so my name is Amy and my whole life I've lived in Manchester. My family home is in Manchester. We're in one of the 10 boroughs, and I also go to University of Manchester. So Manchester is my home, and on March 18th 2020 I had to move out of my university accommodation to go and isolate at home as the whole country then went into lockdown on March 23rd. 2020. We were told that this would be for 3 weeks, and 218 days down the line, yesterday Boris Johnson decided to place Greater Manchester into a local lockdown in Tier 3. For a bit of context, Boris introduced this new 3-tiered system earlier last week, and this 3-tier system, where he abandoned the 5-tier system, introduced a medium, high and very high alert, and the different alerts meant different regulations for different parts of the country rather than a whole national lockdown. Despite there being a large increase in cases in Manchester in the last few weeks, Boris was hesitant to put Manchester into a Tier 3 lockdown when he announced this new system due to resistance by local leaders such as Andy Burnham. Here's a bit of information about Andy Burnham. He is currently the Labour Mayor of Manchester. He is the first Mayor of Manchester. He was elected into Parliament in 2001 as the representative for the Lee constituency, and in 2010 and 2015 he failed to win leadership challenges against Ed Miliband and Jeremy Corbyn respectively. He gave up this seat in 2017 to run for mayor, and he won in 2017 with 63% of the vote. Since then he has focused highly on trying to reduce homelessness within Greater Manchester, and this includes donating 15% of his overall yearly salary towards the cause. Over the last week, Andy Burnham and other Manchester Borough leaders decided to challenge Boris's attempt to put Manchester into a Tier 3 lockdown. Andy stated that the Manchester boroughs would require an extra £15 million a month for the rest of the financial year, which is till March, which would be a total of £90 million in order to secure jobs and get those payments back up to the 80% that they were promised following the first lockdown. According to Andy Burnham, in a press conference held yesterday evening in Manchester city centre, negotiations have been going on for 11 days, and it ended with Boris Johnson and his cabinet deciding to walk out on the negotiations as Andy Burnham and other local leaders decided not to take him up on his offer. Andy Burnham stated that he reduced his original ask from £90 million over the financial year, so up until March, to £65 million, and which is a huge decrease, and Boris wanted them to go down to 60 million, which is the original 2/3 offer that they've been given to other regions that have gone into lockdown, such as Liverpool and Merseyside. In this press conference yesterday, Andy Burnham decided to mention that he had worked out how much was necessary for Manchester to stay afloat to try and support the low-paid and self-employed workers, and notably due to Manchester's larger population than some of the other places that have been put into Tier 3 lockdown. After Andy Burnham's press conference last night, Boris decided to host his own press conference in which he decided to announce that Manchester were being put into a local lockdown of Tier 3, and this was following, obviously, the negotiations not being successful between him and local leaders in Manchester. Boris stated that this had come to a decision after he had given Andy Burnham and local leaders of Manchester until 12 PM a deadline on Tuesday to agree to what they were offering, or Boris was intervening, which is what obviously happened from there. Andy Burnham, in retaliation to this deadline and not being able to actually have any kind of negotiations that were fair to Manchester and to what Andy Burnham was asking for, decided to retaliate, and he called upon MPs to talk about this issue in Parliament. He stated, along with the colleagues that he was also doing the briefing with, that this was not a party politics sort of debate. This was an issue of local government versus national government, although it's likely that the Labour versus Conservative sort of beef did have an involvement due to a lot of the places that have been put into Tier 3 lockdowns are Labour run, are Labour majority, such as Liverpool and Manchester and now Sheffield. Beyond these demands that Andy Burnham had for this to be brought up in Parliament, he wanted to make clear that as much as Andy wanted this for Manchester, and he wanted Manchester to get the correct funding for all the individual people. He also wanted to establish a precedent in that all other cities that would go into tier 3 lockdowns in the future would also get the same treatment that Manchester would in demanding the 80% pay. Further to this, Andy argued that Manchester's been in some form of restriction and lockdown since the initial lockdown was over. We were placed very quickly into no household mixing, no you can only go to bars and pubs with people of your household, stuff like that, very quickly after the lockdown measures were reduced. Therefore, as cases have still risen, he argued that the only outcome of these new restrictions was going to be poverty, jobs lost. He specifically mentioned like door staff and taxi drivers, as well as financial instability for all of the citizens inside of Manchester and the other boroughs being affected by these local lockdowns. So that was a quick rundown of what's kind of happening in Manchester between local leaders and government, and I'm gonna kind of flip it on a little bit to talk about what does this mean in terms of devolution and devolved bodies within the UK. Although a very interrelated topic in terms of local governments versus main governments, this is a A-level politics topic, and I believe that this is a big example that would be helpful if you are doing a politics essay in your UK government module. More background. So in 2014, devolution was granted to Manchester and soon followed by other northern cities such as Sheffield and Liverpool. This was put into legislation through the Cities and Local Government Devolution Act in 2016, which received royal assent, leading to Burnham winning the very first election in 2017. Since the establishment of this local government and local authorities, this is the first major disagreement between local governments and national government. This disagreement, as interesting as it is and how important it is in terms of COVID, it also has long-term implications that it's interesting to see what will result from this disagreement, and I wanted to kind of discuss a couple of the outcomes that could be possible from this. Although they're not all very realistic, it's just more kind of theorising about what could happen. As previously mentioned, Andy Burnham has called on Parliament to try and bring this up and to be discussed in Parliament, which could lead to Parliament deciding the government should take action and help Greater Manchester. That would probably be the most likely of the outcomes from this disagreement. Another one of the outcomes from this disagreement would be for Boris to get rid of devolved bodies, such as the local governments rather than like regional governments like Scotland and Wales. This is definitely, I've put arguably, it's definitely the least likely outcome, as due to Andy Burnham's popularity, his election, he won with 63% of the vote. He has proved very helpful in Manchester in reducing homelessness, which is an industrial big city. It's had a big issue in the past with homelessness, and he's managed to reduce that quite a lot. And also, he's kind of earned this reputation as the King of the North, as the people in Manchester, but also in other northern cities, are liking that he is standing up for them and making them a priority that have often been ignored in Parliament, especially in like the 1970s, 80s. Therefore, if they were to try and remove either devolved governments or just specifically Andy Burnham, even though he's not the only one campaigning, this would likely create protests in the same way that they couldn't get rid of like Scottish governments because of how important they are to the citizens of the place that they are governing. Another possibility is more devolution to northern governments, to the opposite of the last point, in the style of kind of Scotland and what Northern Ireland has in theory, where they have complete control over like budget, the handling of important issues such as COVID. If this was to become a possibility, if this was to actually come into fruition, in theory, this wouldn't be a power that is important as the time it'd take to develop the legislation and to get it to go through the House of Commons and the House of Lords and to get to royal assent. It's likely that COVID, fingers crossed, would be either over or less of a priority at that time. But we would have said that 6 months ago, so who knows? The important outcome of that would be is that in like Scotland, they have the ability to pass individual legislation that's not universally recognised or practised. So these sorts of legislations could be introduced in Manchester to try and help support the North and how things are differently affecting the north than like London. And I think that the importance of mayoralship in like London with Sadiq Khan, and then in Manchester with Andy Burnham, has proved that people do like devolved governments. This is shown through like the Scottish government and the popularity of Nicola Sturgeon during this pandemic. So that's going to be it for today. I'm hoping to put up a new politics lessons video in the next couple of days, so look out for that one. It's going to be just an introductory video into Parliament and kind of how it works and what it's about. So yeah, if you would like to subscribe, the button's down below, and links to all my social medias will also be down below, where I share kind of my life but also educational things in terms of politics and movements that I think are important. I hope you enjoyed and I hope this was helpful, and I'll see you again soon. Bye!